Don't judge a book by its cover. More on that in a moment. First, a story. I met her near the end of my college career. I was falling hard long before I met her. I even gave her a cute nickname, Book Girl. And let's just say Book Girl kept me pretty distracted. Everywhere I looked, Book Girl. The classroom, the quad, the dining hall, Book Girl all the time. I was intrigued. I was smitten. I was flying high with thoughts of a serendipitous moment with Book Girl. When she would speak in class with wisdom and wit, I would lean in with a thankful smile. She always ate lunch and dinner in the same spot in the dining hall. And every single time I saw her, I was just drawn to her intellect. I was drawn to her confidence. And I thought to myself, I have to get to know this Book Girl. But I was terrified by the prospect of talking to her. What would she say? How would she respond? For months, I mulled over the idea. Should I approach her? Should I not? Finally, the moment arrived. I spotted Book Girl on a Friday night, sitting in the same spot in the dining hall, alone. This was my moment. I walked right up to her table. I sat down. What did I say? Well, I think you are incredibly sexy. I swear it was not like a romantic scene out of The Notebook, but for the most part, it got her attention. Book Girl looked at me, hand on her cheek, and she says so effortlessly, "What brings that on?" It was pretty funny. I was so excited that I had approached Book Girl. But there's just one more thing. The punchline, actually. Don't judge a book by its cover. Book Girl was a book guy. And nearly 5 years later, he is here with me this afternoon, and he is the love of my life. And this stage is the very first time I have said that in public. And honestly, after repeating this story to myself, wherever you are, I'm sorry for kind of stalking you. Let me tell you how I got here, the backstory. I grew up near Calumet Park, far south side of Chicago, and for the longest time, my sexual identity had made me anxious. I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't understand it. My neighborhood, my context, it deepened my anxiety. Let me explain. One of the fondest memories I have growing up is going to the barbershop. I would get up early on a Saturday morning hoping to beat the barbershop crowd. The barbershop was a great place because no topic was off limits. Politics, women's sports, UFO sightings, anything. It was all fair game. The barbershop was also a cool place because it was the one place where my dad would share very intimate details of his life. My dad, brothers, and I would be in the barbershop huddled up like a little football team, and my dad would be very open about his marriage and bills and about his job, and it was amazing to me as a 14-year-old to see this place make my dad so comfortable opening up. The barbershop I went to was all black. The clientele was all black. The barbers were all black. And it was great for me as an African American to be in a place where people that looked like me were comfortable sharing their opinions very openly. And I remember when I was 14 years old, I got up on an early Saturday morning and I went to the barbershop. And this time the conversation was very different. What would you do if your son was gay? This was the very first time I'd heard this type of conversation in the barbershop. And I remember I took my seat and I'm playing my PSP. And one of the barbers, he immediately yells out to another barber, "Hey man, my son cannot be gay." And another barber responds to him. And he says, "I would have to disown my son if he was gay." I scanned the barbershop, this 14-year-old, just to try to gauge reaction from the other barbers. And when they all laughed, I did too. I wanted to be accepted. And that was the very first time in my life when I developed an anxiety about my sexual identity. I suppressed it. I didn't want to talk about it. My context in my neighborhood made me uncomfortable talking about my sexual orientation. And that anxiety carried over to my freshman year at Purdue, which wasn't much better. The second night on campus, I was chatting with guys from my residence hall. And one of the guys randomly says, "I'm so happy I don't have a gay roommate." I scanned the group of guys just to see how others would respond. And when they all agreed, so did I. I felt like I was back in that barbershop, and I wanted to feel accepted. I spent my early days at Purdue hiding in a computer lab because I was afraid to open up about who I was. While my floor mates were out partying every Friday night, that was my escape, the computer lab until close. I was disconnected from myself. This anxiety about my sexuality, it made me uncomfortable opening up. Whenever someone would say gay or whenever they would say bisexual, I would freeze up. My wall went up. It prevented me from connecting with others. While spending time in the lab, I began to educate myself on sexual identity, gender expression. I sought validation for my emotions. And one of the earliest theories I came across was the CAS model. This model offers a process for ultimately affirming one's gay or lesbian orientation. And during my research, I began to realize how this model intersected with numerous areas of my life. Stage 1 of the CAS model is identity confusion, or the who am I stage. And for me, I was that 14-year-old in that barbershop. When I left, I was very confused about who I was. I was in a state of self-denial. Stage 2 is the identity comparison stage, or the am I the only one like this, where one begins to isolate themselves. That was me my freshman year at Purdue. I hid in the computer lab because I thought I was the only one who felt these emotions. Stage 3 is identity tolerance, where one begins to seek out others who may feel the same thing they do. For me, it looked like this. When I tried to join the university LGBTQ center, I was not comfortable with who I was to follow through. Stage 4 is identity acceptance. This is the I will be okay stage. And for me, this stage came when I saw Book Guy, in that dining hall on that Friday night. And I thought to myself, damn, I have to have him, and I don't care what anyone has to say about that. Stage 5 is identity pride, where one begins to own who they are. And stage 6 is identity synthesis, where one realizes that sexual identity is only a small part of who you are. This model was so validating to me that I began to use it as a tool to measure my progress of self-acceptance. And when I was able to connect my personal experiences to the stages of this model, I began to realize that my emotions, I'm just like all of you. I am just like every single one of us in this audience. We all have our own process of how we accept ourselves. The CAS model I use for my process. You may have your own. And once I was able to own who I was and I was able to establish that these emotions are okay, I'm fine, I'm good, then I was able to explain who I was to others. I remember one of my last roommates in college, after I approached Book Girl and we had been chatting for a little bit, I decided I wanted to tell my roommate. I was ready. I had owned who I was. I was prepared to share who I was with someone. But at the same time, I was so afraid because I just didn't know how he would respond. I had accepted myself, but I just didn't know what he would say. It was early on a Saturday. I was pacing back and forth. I was in the bathroom, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I said, Jameson, you got it, you got it, you got it. And as soon as the door opened, I heard him come in. I was just a mess. I walked out of the bathroom, and I remember I just said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to finally open up about who I am. I walked in the living room. I sat next to my roommate, and before I said a word, he beat me to the punch. He says, Jameson, are you and Lucas dating? I took a deep breath, and I said to him, no, but I am potentially interested in him. My roommate looked at me, and he says, okay, I'm just nosy. You want to get a drink? I did not expect that. Definitely didn't expect the drink part. But I didn't expect that. I truly expected to be judged. I expected to be rejected. For the first time in my life, I developed a sense of confidence about who I was as a person. And that confidence carried over to the one person. I wanted to tell the one person who really matters to me the most, and that was my father. My dad has always been the number one superhero in my life. He has always been there, and he has always been the most supportive figure that I've ever had. And I did not want to bear the responsibility of potentially disappointing him. My dad's a pretty open person, but my neighborhood and my context made me uncomfortable opening up about that part of myself to my dad. It was this past July, and I got the call randomly, and it was my dad. My dad said to me, "Jameson, I want you to be honest with me. Are you and Lucas dating?" My heart was beating so fast. I wasn't sure if I was prepared. I didn't know how my father would respond. I responded to my father, "Yes, we are, and we're happy." And my dad said to me, "Thank you for finally telling me." Know this, my journey of self-connection taught me that in order to connect with others, you must first connect with yourself. This incredible journey of self-discovery has truly shaped who I am, and it has truly taught me the importance of giving others the space to accept themselves at their own pace. I had to learn that I had to accept who I was before I was able to share that with others. And frankly, I had to learn that my sexual identity is nobody's damn business. And frankly, we should not be forced to share an intimate part of our lives if we're not ready. When you're conversing with someone you feel may be coming to terms with who they are, know that they will accept themselves at their own pace. With that said, just a single supportive individual, like my roommate, can perhaps offer the confidence that someone needs to break through. Go out and be that roommate for someone today. And remember, it takes courage to connect, but even more courage to connect with ourselves. Thank you.